Hey, improvement nerds, before we jump in, here's what you need to know. Today's episode is where Lean Six Sigma and artificial intelligence collide in the best way possible. Our guest, Justin Fischgrund, is a master black belt engineer, professor, and patent-holding problem solver who spent his career exploring how tech and process improvement can work hand in hand. We dig into how AI can be used with Lean, not in place of it, and why understanding your data, your workflow, and your people is more important now more than ever. Whether you're already experimenting with AI tools or just trying to figure out where to begin, this conversation is packed with practical insights, cautionary tales, and some inspiration for what's possible. So let's settle in and get ready, because today we're doing what we do best, waging war against bad processes. Hey there, improvement nerds. Today we're diving into the world of process improvement and tech-driven innovation with Justin Fischgrund, a powerhouse engineer, patent inventor, and professor. Justin has spent over a decade transforming industries from tech startups to aviation and naval operations, delivering over $100 million in efficiency and revenue gains. With a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, PMP, and professional engineering licensure, he knows how to blend streamlined processes with cutting-edge tech to drive real impact. Justin, I'm excited to nerd out with you today. Is there anything in that introduction that I missed or that you'd like to add?
Hi, I appreciate that, Mark. Thanks so much. Appreciate the introduction and looking forward to talking with you.
Absolutely. Just a little bit about how we met. We were both at a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and I know you do a lot of conferences. You had a session there on Lean and AI, and unfortunately I missed that due to some scheduling, but fortunately we did end up catching up over a lunch break that we had. So we had a quick chat that turned into a great discussion on innovation, technology, continuous improvement. And from that conversation, we just knew we had to get you on the podcast to share your expertise with all of us. I will say here in Indianapolis, we do host a networking event for Lean Six Sigma professionals. And we have some time allotted for some small breakout groups and agendaless discussion. And generally, the topics that are more important for them to pick and discuss used to be centered around leadership and how do we get leadership buy-in to our continuous improvement efforts. So we would see that theme reoccurring over and over. But there's a neat thing that's emerging lately. And the good thing about being a facilitator at one of these networking events is that I get to hear and listen in to these different group settings. And the topic that's becoming more and more front and center with these Lean Six Sigma professionals is AI. So I think we're going to dedicate a lot of time today talking about AI, and I know you have a lot of experience with that. Let's just get it started with a question that's probably on everyone's mind. So AI is perceived as a revolutionary technology, and Lean Six Sigma has been optimizing processes for decades. So how do you see AI complementing Lean Six Sigma methodologies rather than replacing them? So I think there might be some fear there.
Great question. And, throughout my career, I've spent my time, my focus and energy merging the connection between lean principles and technology principles, advanced technology. How do you merge two components that most people wouldn't necessarily find complementary, really deliver operational excellence, value engineering to that? Lean at the core is all about driving operational efficiency, reducing waste, delivering value. Artificial intelligence is really a simulation of human cognition to be able to drive innovation, right? How do you combine the two? How do you think about traditional AI, which is typically broad solutions, complex, large scale? They could be, significant resources, development timelines, comprehensive solutions, right? A lot of value there. It's been around for some time. When you think about lean in AI, it's taking the Lean Six Sigma and the traditional AI and kind of putting it upside down in the sense that it's the duality of the terminology of lean. It's Lean Six Sigma from let's prioritize speed, let's prioritize waste minimization, let's prioritize efficiency, right? But it also pulls on the lean product management, lean software development of how do you think about targeted solutions, high value problems, iterating over time through prototyping, rapid prototyping, testing, minimum viable product, so you can focus on quick wins to reduce waste, not only from a end user perspective, but also waste from a capital allocation and time of a development team, right? And that's where I find a lot of passion in the lean AI, because it's looking at it both ways. How do you use AI to drive efficiency, but how do you use lean to drive efficiency with respect to how you apply AI from a development perspective. So that's kind of the core of where my business specializes in, is helping organizations through the use of people, process, and technology find ways to become more efficient through whether process improvement, advanced technology solutions, automation, you name it. How do we merge the two together?
Yeah, I mean, and you said it, lean focuses on eliminating waste and then improving efficiency. And you're talking about how you can leverage AI to help organizations do that, identify and remove waste more effectively.
Yep.
Are there any clear strategies or tips, tricks, or techniques on how to do that?
Yeah, so the methodology that I find that works best is in a couple different ways. And I was having this conversation earlier with somebody. There's a whole mindset of how you can use readily available AI solutions to facilitate the use of lean techniques, right? Process mapping, SIPOC. And there's a lot of value in that perspective. Where I try to come in is, how do you apply lean principles to the development of AI solutions, technology solutions within your business? So how do you look at not only the benefits of what AI can do from a lean manufacturing perspective, lean in service? It could do predictive maintenance, it could do scheduling, it could help you become more efficient with respect to processing invoices, like you name it. There's so many different ways. But how do you then go beyond that and look at the key components to be able to leverage AI within your business? So you need to have strong data, you need to have transparent decision making, you need to have a data quality, data structure, a lot around the data aspect. And the lean AI methodology is, how do you create a data strategy and overcome the risks of artificial intelligence? Most importantly, the quality of the data, to be able to make sure whatever solution or solution set you invest in is going to deliver the highest value and trust within it. And that's where it's the merging of using tools that are commonly found within the lean toolkit, like a SIPOC diagram, a swim lane diagram, standard work. How do we leverage these techniques to help define a data strategy, help streamline end-to-end operations so that we can apply a custom AI solution on top of that?
You mentioned data-driven decision-making and having that drive your strategy. Many companies just rush into AI adoption without a clear strategy.
Yes.
And in Lean Six Sigma, we're emphasizing defining the problem before jumping to solutions. So how should organizations ensure they're using AI to solve the right type of problems?
Yes, that's the core of the value proposition that me and the team work to, right? I've had many companies come to me and say, hey, we want to build insert AI solution, right? And it's like, great. My job here is to make sure that we're spending your time, resources, developing a solution that's viable, valuable, usable, and feasible, right? It's going to be something that people are going to adopt. It's going to deliver business value. It's going to be trustworthy. It's not going to be pulling information that's not, appropriate to do so. It's not going to have bias within the data. So it's all about making sure it has the product market fit and the value. And we want to make sure we build the right thing versus build the thing right. Two different ways to think about it, right? We want to build the right solution. We don't want to just take requirements and build the solution correctly, but it didn't actually solve a problem. So we always take a couple steps back and say it's mirroring off of the DMAIC methodology, which is another play again on the lean AI. It's always start with the current state assessment. How do we look at your current workflows, business operations, to truly understand inefficiencies and what the value and KPIs are within your business? How do we look at an AI audit to look at your data readiness, organizational gaps, look at your reporting to really understand where you are from a current state? And how do we dive in further to really look at the specific use cases that AI can solve and prioritize them based on value, rank them based on impact and value and feasibility, and put together a roadmap where we can converge on the right solutions? Is it going to be building? Is it going to be buying? Is it going to be a hybrid solution? How are we going to phase it? How are we going to test it to make sure that we actually feel confident before we invest all this time and money it's the right solution? And then how do we implement it, right? So it's really 4 phases. And it's not to say that this needs to be a 4-year initiative, right? Drawn out. It's not to say that we're going to make this way more complicated than it is. But by doing the first 3 steps before just the implementation, where many companies want the instant gratification, we're going to provide increased confidence and with a high degree of probability that you're going to end up delivering a solution that's actually going to achieve value, whatever the term value means for your business, with your customers internally and external customers.
As I think about that, like the traditional AI often takes more of a broad, resource intensive approach, whereas it sounds like what you're talking about is more of a rapid iterative improvement.
Definitely. Exactly.
Can you share any example where an organization applied this lean AI or lean AI principles successfully?
So I think in general, it's really pulling from the lean startup, lean product software development methodology, which is all about the minimum viable product. How do you determine the minimum functionality for the minimum audience to be able to iteratively deliver value over time so that when you converge on the solution, you don't spend years and years developing a complex solution that doesn't end up having any value or product market fit. So there's, I would say here, and this is part of holistically, AI is just one part of the technology toolkit, so to speak, right? You can do automation, custom software applications, AI agents, any technology problem that you're looking at, you'll want to take a look at how do you take a lean mindset to it, from testing your risk case assumption to then be able to determine if you actually want to move forward with that, right? So that's what the whole concept's about, not just for AI, but for any software development, because software in general can be time intensive, resource intensive. So years ago, when I was working for a corporation, we were thinking about developing technology solutions to help in-store experience. And long story short, we wanted to go down the path of introducing a kiosk within stores to help ordering systems in the store. And we could have gone down the path of developing a great solution that had the flashiest interface and all this back-end amazing logic that, just was perfect. But we realized that if we didn't overcome the riskiest assumption was, would people in a store even want to use a kiosk? It didn't matter what was behind it, right? So how do we take a lean approach to that from a lean methodology and test that assumption before we invest resources? So we ended up doing some experiments where we just put a tablet on a stand and we had a sign that says, interested in finding out if we have your product, scan here. And there was nothing that actually worked behind it, but we found out and were able to confirm that people would actually use the technology, and we asked them questions and that helped inform our roadmap. So that's one way to use an experiment. But I say this because as many companies are investing a ton of time and money in flashy, personalized AI solutions that spit out all these recommendations, what you name it, there's some different paths forward. Have you taken the time to truly see if it's solving a problem and customers would use that solution? Because if not, you're wasting a lot of time down a path that isn't really necessary.
It seems to me that with using AI, whether someone's on ChatGPT or they have a software that has an AI embedded in it, there is some real thinking, and I'm probably answering my next question I have for you in advance of the question, but you have to be able to ask the right questions or know what questions to ask. And it seems like with you doing that testing up front, this is something that takes the human brain to figure out, to know what inputs to ask AI.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think with the advent of AI, I'm sure there's risk to the labor force, but specifically within the realm of Lean Six Sigma, do you think there's risk of, well, hey, AI can just do that for us? Or do you see this as an opportunity for us to be able to better apply the tools and use them to become more effective at what we do?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it?
Yeah, I don't see a world in our lifetime where AI is going to replace humans, right? It's a world with both humans and AIs. There's complementary components to it. First thing I always say is AI, advanced technology solutions, whatever terminology you want to use there for technology that's going to help advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, that whole kind of ecosystem, so to speak. It delivers human capital. It helps deliver more skills to a workforce to become more efficient and do more with less, scale a business while keeping consistent workforce in place, but being able to have hockey stick growth and kind of that whole piece, right? Where AI excels at the repetitive and mundane tasks, companies will continue to look at ways to integrate AI to free up humans to focus on more complex creative tasks. That's why I first started by saying it's all about delivering value, human capital, additional skill sets to workers to become more efficient so that they can leverage AI help with automated routine tasks, repetitive tasks, areas where it could provide 24/7 support, all that whole piece, then offset and reallocate people to think outside the box, develop innovative strategies, connect with humans, interpersonal connection, emotional connection, integrating societal values, norms, all those things that AI doesn't have the ability to do, right? So it's a world of both. AI is not going anywhere, but it's also not replacing. And it's how do you integrate AI into your business so you can streamline your operations and really support your workforce more effectively so that they can know this is a good case where AI can be leveraged here. This is a case where maybe a human, should drive it end to end.
Yeah, I really believe this technology is going to help rather than hurt us if we use it correctly. So,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, making us more productive. But really, I see us as Lean Six Sigma practitioners. We're the ones that are really putting thought behind how we ask questions to move people through change. And whether we do a SWOT analysis or a PESTLE, these external things that affect us, AI doesn't really know what's going on in our situation, the political environment, all those external things, unless we put in a really, really great prompt. Sometimes we can ask AI a question and it'll come out with the magical answers, but a lot of times we got to keep beating down the answer to get to what we want. So that's our special gift, is to be able to ask the right questions. And maybe we translate that into creating the right prompts to get what we need. But I don't see AI creating the questions for us or understanding the environment around us. So in that way, I feel like we're irreplaceable. And this is just another new technology, and it spawns some fear, just like all technology does. When electricity came out or when the internet was introduced, there was some panic, but we just learned to live with it.
Yeah, a couple of things on that topic. I think that's great insight there, Mark. Is that one of the things I actually typically start with when I do talks, workshops, webinars on this, is that it is a new technology that we've gone through this evolution. When cars came out and the first car accident happened, cars weren't banned, right? We had laws and regulations. Same kind of thing with artificial intelligence. It's going to be for the better, but that's where, like I said, I spent a lot of my time educating people on the risks that need to overcome, because if you don't have quality data, if there's inherent bias where models are trained off of data that skews with one race or gender, like it can have adverse effects that are not beneficial for society, right? So we need to have laws and regulations. The other piece is that what many people miss, there's tons of readily available tools out there, right? ChatGPT being the most common, is that, when you're using the free version or even the pro version, because some people say, well, I pay for ChatGPT, it's still hosted by OpenAI, kind of their infrastructure. So you still have the data flowing through there. The models are trained on their data. So when you talk about like a great prompt, which is, you always want to be as specific as possible, it still doesn't have data that's trained based off of what you need to have it, right? That's where a lot of these companies are going into the more of the custom solutions, like hosting their own, solution on Azure, like their own ChatGPT, so to speak, right? So now you can actually fine tune and train models, based on some of your data with additional contextual data, to be able to more effectively and accurately answer questions and prompts. That's why many times when you'll prompt ChatGPT, like, where did I get that answer? Right? It's hallucinating. It thinks it knows the answer, but it doesn't. And I always find that to be very interesting. One of the best examples of hallucinating that I find is that when you type into ChatGPT, you ask them a question, it answers and say that's not right, it's a mistake. And ChatGPT most of the time will say, like, sorry, I mistyped that, I misspoke.
Yeah.
It didn't actually misspeak. What happened is it's actually hallucinating, because what it's doing with all the models, when millions of data that it's collecting instantaneously, or matching instantaneously based on the data that it was trained, that's most of the time what people say when you tell someone wrong. Sorry, I misspoke, mistyped. That's exactly what AI is doing. And that's one of the most fascinating examples, in my opinion, of how, like, you can't always trust what you get from an AI solution.
I use ChatGPT a lot just to keep productive, but I'll find that it says that a lot to me. And maybe it's just because I'm lazy in my prompts, but I'll start out with asking a question and then I'll say, no, that's not what I meant. I want this to, have more of this flavor, or can you include this? And so we might go back and forth. So I don't know if it does make me more productive, because I'm putting
it's
in.
It's fun to do that though, right?
It is fun. So maybe the novelty of it is great. But I was just thinking before this podcast, this podcast is probably only as good as maybe questions I can ask, because you're a wealth of knowledge. And if you just sat and gave a lecture, which we know is awesome, that's great. But there's a risk, because my questions to you may not be good prompts, right? I might not be asking the right questions that the audience wants to hear. So I was just thinking about those parallels to,
That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, getting a successful outcome as far as even a podcast where we're asking questions and trying to meet the needs of the listening audience. You did talk about some bias within data.
Mm-hmm.
AI thrives on data, and Lean Six Sigma thrives on structured, data-driven decision making. So how can organizations ensure they have high quality, unbiased data before using AI in process improvement?
Yeah, that's a great question in terms of the data, right? You need to make sure, as I mentioned, like if you have, for example, medical data that skews towards the data that the model is trained on or fine-tuned on, and mostly about male doctors, right? Well, then AI will assume most doctors are male. It's just like a simple example of that. But that's where I go into push the whole importance of the data strategy, right? How do you define your data in a way that you can make sure you're going to get the most out of whatever solution you proceed with? And that's where you can come up with a data strategy this is where the whole lean AI comes in, by using lean tools that are meant to help organizations from a streamlining and from a end-to-end identification perspective that can happen just as effectively, just purely from a data perspective, right? So for example, you want to understand a little about various types of data, right? So you need to know what types of data you have and where it's stored and how systems talk to each other and how it's structured, when there are inconsistencies with the data or siloed data, or what's the governance and the access, right? From a strategy perspective, it's mainly governance, quality integration, and then compliance. You can use a SIPOC tool. How do you define all the internal and external sources of data? How do you define the inputs, including raw data pre-processed? How do you define the process of how it actually goes through? How do you define the expected results? From a swim lane diagram, classic tool that we typically use from a lean perspective, typically to map out a physical process. It can help you understand where data originates, it flows, consumed, how systems talk to each other, where there might be inconsistencies that you might need to address, where there's actually inefficiencies from a data perspective. So these tools that we often use from a lean perspective can help you overcome some of the risks that happen before implementing an AI solution.
I'm just thinking, backing up a bit as you give that answer,
Yeah.
Because I'm just a geek and I love talking about this, and maybe I'm making some assumptions about the audience and their familiarity with AI. So if I'm working at a manufacturing plant, I just go to ChatGPT and say, how do I make this work cell more productive and efficient? It's going to probably give me an answer, and then I'll say something back and it'll say, sorry, I messed up.
Yeah.
And because of it's pulling from data,
Yep.
whereas there might be a manufacturing software or someone, has their own AI on a cloud somewhere. Can you walk us through the different sources that AI pulls through? And is ChatGPT same as a software, a proprietary software that I work with in my job each day? Where are they pulling that information from to make better decisions?
Yeah. So, no, great question. That's where we kind of get into, if we use ChatGPT, for example, because that's the most common. When you're using these, it's cloud-based on OpenAI servers, right? So they're collecting all this data. They're using publicly readily available data. And that's how they're training. These large language models have been trained off of millions and millions of data points, right? And when someone interacts with it, there's OpenAI terms. Some user data can be used to train. It depends in terms of certain components, but you're not able to train these based off of your own data. So when you're prompting it, even when you're being as specific as possible, it's responding based off of the data that it's been trained on, right? And it doesn't have the context to your perspective. When you start to get into an enterprise solution, it's still hosted by OpenAI, but now you have enterprise security. So it's not just the pro version, it's beyond that. You can integrate your custom data from your own organization. So it has like private knowledge bases and there's various technical components, but you're still going through and passing that data through OpenAI, right? Where people are getting into the more advanced solutions is where they're hosting it via Azure, Microsoft Azure, OpenAI. You can get access to OpenAI models, but they're hosted on Azure's enterprise grade solution. So you can create that a custom interface, Justin GPT, right? Whatever, that is going to engage with the model. The information is going to stay confined within Azure's instance. And you can now have dedicated data that's going to reside within your own cloud that can be configured specifically. And then those models can be fine-tuned accordingly based off of your data. And then you can get into like private deployment where you're using like open source models on your own infrastructure fully. This is more complex, more costly, but now you have more control over it, full customization, flexibility in customizing the model, using the internal data, full ownership over the data, right? It doesn't even live on Azure. Now it's within your own private servers and instances and all that. So that's like the varying levels of complexity. Long story short, when you're using these readily available models out there, which are great, right? Don't get me wrong. The data that the responses are coming back are trained off of all this data that's out there, but it's not specifically tailored towards your needs. And also your data now runs within their instance. As you get into hosting on a cloud provider solution, now you get a little more customized. When you go to like private deployment, now you have full customization, and you can then also have more control over the data. So that's like the varying levels. But obviously, as we get up that ladder, as I mentioned, in terms of the complexity of the solution, cost and other factors play in. That's why ChatGPT might work for some businesses, right? That's fine. You're not working with highly sensitive data and help. And then other companies who want to have predictive maintenance models or to know when they need to proactively change a machine part, like that probably won't work. You'll probably want to have a custom interface that's built within Azure that you can then leverage the large language models and still have confidence in the data outputs.
Yeah,
hopefully your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I hope that it answers a lot of questions for those who might be listening, because again, there's fear, there's just unknowing. Maybe someone that has a friend that works with highly sensitive information, whether that be in the government or in pharma, their organization said, you can never get on ChatGPT. So they're afraid to do that in their own business, where there's other businesses that upper level executives encourage the use of ChatGPT so employees become more productive and they're not spending a half hour or trying to draft an email. So understanding the different phases and where the AI is drawing its information from, I think is important, and understanding the policies, of course, of your organization, but just to keep it at arm's length because you're scared of the new technology is probably not the best thing. So thanks for clarifying that.
And I think on that note as well, some companies are saying, they don't want employees to use ChatGPT, right? Again, there's sensitivity around that. That's why you're also seeing many companies that are spinning up their own internal ChatGPT, right? Similar to what I just mentioned, most likely probably hosted through like an instance like Azure or something to that extent, where, again, I'm not going to say it's something that can be done in a day, but like it's not overly complex of an initiative where it's a huge money and time investment, so to speak, relatively, versus there's other options out there where you build your own large language model, right? Now that's a whole other ball game. In my personal opinion, it depends in terms of the use case. And this is all part of the discovery that we kind of talked about, up front in terms of the current state assessment, but there needs to be a pretty big business case ROI analysis to justify, going out there and building a custom large language model when you have 4 or 5 key players in the industry who have proven the robustness of theirs, and there's open source models that you can kind of tap into as well. So, but all things are on the table when you're assessing. But I think some companies think that the whole spinning up their own custom interface is much further reaching than it actually is.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm sorry if I derailed us from
not at all.
The conversation, but just like when we had our lunch together, I could talk about this stuff for hours, but bringing it back to lean applications, we use problem-solving methodologies like DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, or PDCA, plan, do, check, act. Where do you see AI having the biggest impact, if any, for these phases?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we've talked a lot about how you can use lean principles to help overcome some of the risks of AI when you're getting into more of a custom solution, right? But I'm a big proponent of, again, making sure that no sensitive data is like being shared, and that whole aspect of using AI to help, up front. Like when we're thinking about the whole define, measure, before we start converging down to how we're going to solve the problem, we're having divergent thinking where they're gathering lots of qualitative and quantitative data to help make informed decisions about where we head next. Gather all this data and we want to start to synthesize it, maybe put it into an affinity diagram. That's an area where that could be very time intensive. You can have artificial intelligence help you walk through that journey. It's not like you can just feed it all and then it creates the categories, the insights, and then you put it in a PowerPoint and present it out to leadership, right? It's a refined process, an iterative process that takes time. But synthesizing large amounts of data can be extremely helpful in that regard. Some people use it for brainstorming as well. I'm cautious of that as well because it gets into the earlier discussion we had where, Humans inherently have a lot of opportunities for innovation and divergent thinking, where I'd be cautious to let AI start that for you. I'm always a believer of starting with broad thinking from a brainstorming perspective, then having AI help refine it. So it's just where you plug it in. But I think in general, the synthesis phase of taking lots of unstructured data and then being able to pull it together is a big piece within the DMAIC journey that an AI solution can help you become more efficient in.
Yeah, I guess we always need to preface these questions now with depending on what organization you're in. I also like the approach of we do our brainstorming activities, then maybe throw in that into some kind of AI and see what it comes up with. It could be on base or not, but it could save us a lot of work. So if you think about doing like a value stream analysis or something like that, or we're just brainstorming or putting post-it notes up on walls, we love to see that as Lean Six Sigma practitioners. But then the session's over and the day is done, and it's up to the facilitator now to affinitize maybe those post-it notes and sit down for a few hours to try to read the handwriting and put this all into an Excel file. So where I find it to be helpful is I might be facilitating a workshop one day and we have these post-it notes up, and you can actually use the camera function on your phone and just take a picture of the post-it notes and ask the AI to affinitize or to group or to pull out themes or to synthesize. Again, we don't want any proprietary information, but this can help us be so much more impactful and productive by understanding what even the AI on your phone can do. I was facilitating a yellow belt workshop and we were talking about 5S, and we had talked about AI, and they said, can AI help with 5S? And I said, let me see. And I pulled up the phone and I asked AI, and I said, AI, what would you do to 5S this room? And so it could see the room and it says, it looks like there's a bunch of chairs over in the corner that you might want to sort out, along with some extra water bottles, and then you might want to set in order. And so it can actually see and give information. And again, we use it just as a reference and not as like, well, this is just going to do Lean Six Sigma for me, but it's a good way to make us as Lean Six Sigma facilitators maybe more productive if we can use that technology in the space without divulging information that might be proprietary.
Of course, yeah. Completely agree.
How do you see then the role of the Lean Six Sigma professional evolving as there's this rise of AI? Like, what tips? I mean, I just gave a couple on how you could take post-it notes and affinitize them. What are the things that Lean practitioners should be doing now to leverage AI and make sure that they're still on top of their game as AI settles into the work environment?
Yeah, I think in general, and I teach this a lot in class as well, because I teach a Lean Six Sigma class and I pull in a lot of concepts in terms of technology and AI. It's always being aware of technology and kind of the overall landscape. I always say when you're practicing Lean Six Sigma, maybe in a consulting capacity, you may not always be the expert in the subject matter expert, right? But what you're doing is you're facilitating dialogue, workshops, whatever it is, projects with those who are the SMEs, and you're effectively using a toolkit to not try to minimize it, but to try to move through and get the most robust information to be able to make the best informed decision. And sometimes the best informed decision will be a solution that's going to involve advanced technology, and sometimes it's just going to be a pure process improvement. And that kind of ties back to your question. One, we've talked a little about how to use AI to help Lean Six Sigma practitioners become more efficient, and there's certainly a lot more dialogue on that. What I say is the other side of it's understanding when a solution may or may not involve AI to help solve a customer's problem. And when AI might be a viable solution, but it's not the most effective solution for the problem at hand, because you can do a good old-fashioned automation or something like that. So I just say, keep it in mind as a solution option as you're solving problems, but it's not the only solution. Many companies want to get the flashy solution now because that's the market trend. But our job as Lean Six Sigma practitioners is to drive operational efficiency, waste, kind of all that. And if we end up implementing the wrong solution, then we haven't done our jobs.
Yep, absolutely. So looking ahead, what industries do you think will benefit the most from AI-driven lean methodologies and why?
I mean, lean has always had a big core within the manufacturing space. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for a couple of different reasons. There's a strong connection between lean and manufacturing, obviously, but also manufacturing, you tend to have organizations that have tons and tons of data. Now it's how do you take that data, structure it in a way that can be effective, but the data is there. It's just how do you actually leverage that, which becomes kind of the big piece from an AI standpoint. So I think that's a big area. I've seen it. I've worked a lot in retail. There's a lot of AI from like a personalization from a shopping perspective. That's a really big piece now. How do you personalize the end-to-end shopping experience, like Amazon, for example, so that you can proactively identify areas like reduce the waste within a customer's shopping journey, right? So they don't have to look around a lot, reduce the number of steps, add to cart, all things like that. So there's a lot of different areas from like a service perspective that can be valuable as well.
What advice would you give to Lean Six Sigma for professionals who want to integrate AI into their improvement efforts, but they just don't know where to start?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'd say, I know I talked a lot about the custom areas and the caveats with ChatGPT, but I use AI solutions all the time throughout my day to make me more efficient from an email perspective, you name it. So do some research and find out there's tools out there, right? Some people have preference over others, but do some research out there and just test it out, right? That's how we all started, with just testing out and understanding. There's a lot of readings out there. You look on LinkedIn, everyone's sharing their insights. I'm sure you can go down that rabbit hole. My advice is just dive in, test it, and then iterate upon that. Kind of like what I talked about from a software development perspective is get in there, learn from actual user behavior yourself, iterate upon that, and then figure out how you can merge it within your day-to-day. So that's my advice, just kind of dive in, and then you can supplement it with some research in other areas and see what people are doing. But ultimately, how are you going to tailor it to your specific day-to-day? The only way you'll know that is to figure out some of the challenges and opportunities, pain points you face within your day-to-day operations, and then how a solution like AI could be valuable, or you find it's not valuable.
Learn by doing.
Yeah.
A lean concept. So
Yes.
just get in there and roll up your sleeves and see, and what works, continue it. What doesn't work, move on. This is just a personal story, but I can remember when I was younger, a lot younger, I started off in automotive mechanics. So I was a technician for Toyota, and the new alignment machine had a computer attached to it. So alignments were done with strings, levels, that type of stuff. And now this manufacturer came out with a new alignment machine that had a computer tied to it. And there was a bunch of technicians that just did not want to work with or play with this computer to see. And I was a young guy, and I was just like, I'm going to learn how to do this. And I was one of maybe just 2 or 3 people that knew how to do an alignment. So I was getting all the alignments and I was getting all of that work. So it was very good for me in that I was just open to the technology and that I was just jumping in with both feet. So I think, like you, I would just say, get in there, work with it, see how it can help you, rather than keeping it at arm's distance and then not knowing or understanding and getting left behind. So good advice.
Definitely.
And then also, I know that you can help. You have a consulting business.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with you or reach out to you if their organization needs any help?
Definitely. Yeah. So I have a consulting business, Fischgrund Consulting. We specialize in helping organizations, as I mentioned earlier, become more efficient in their end-to-end operations through the use of process improvement, technology, advanced technology, AI solutions. It's all about how do we inject the right solution for the people, the process, and the technology within their organization. Working with small, medium, large size organizations, public and private, across a variety of different industries. There's, industry agnostic in the sense that I always find that these skill sets can be applied holistically across the board. So me and the team that I have work with, broad skill sets that can apply these concepts no matter the challenge. I have LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Justin Fischgrund. Also have our business LinkedIn page, Fischgrund Consulting, or my website, fischgrundconsulting.com. You can get my contact information there, and would love to chat with anyone to talk further about this topic. I'm very passionate about it and always open to furthering the dialogue.
And we'll go ahead and place the links on our social medias and attach it to this podcast as well. I appreciate you taking your time out today, Justin, to talk with us and the Improvement Nerd audience so much. So thank you for your time. And I hope to continue this conversation with you moving forward and just continuing to learn from you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, Mark, and looking forward to continuing the dialogue and continuing the conversation.
And that's a wrap, Improvement Nerds. Big thanks to Justin Fischgrund for joining us and unpacking what it really means to bring Lean and AI together in practical, thoughtful ways. Whether you're optimizing a process, building a smarter data strategy, or just figuring out where to start with AI, remember, it's not about replacing human insight, it's about enhancing it. As always, we hope this episode sparked a few ideas and gave you some tools to take back to your own work. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow improvement nerd who's ready to think differently. We'll catch you next time. Until then, remember to leave your processes better than you found them.